Hello, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. What a week or so we have had with the presidential campaign, the never-ending legal travail of Donald Trump, and the press covering both. And I think the press is due for some really strong criticism. They continue to treat this race like it's just another campaign. We had the winners and losers of the debate. We had people speculating, gosh, maybe one of the candidates will go up a point or two in the polls after the race. This is inappropriate coverage, if you will, for a time in which what we are facing is a contest between fascism and democracy. One party behaving like a normal political party, and the other lining up behind a guy that's, for all intents and purposes, a right-wing strongman. I don't mean that he's strong, I mean that he's in the mode of the Mussolinis, the Berlusconis, those types of figures who traffic in propaganda, who traffic in abuse of women, who defy the rule of law, and who use violence instrumentally. And the press continues to ignore that. And what happens when they do that? They domesticate the Republican Party and Trump. They make him seem more acceptable, more normal. And that's what they should not be doing. That may give them a false sense that they are above it all, that they're not taking sides, that they are neutral. But in fact, that's not educating the American people, because they are giving the Republican Party, and Trump specifically, cover, if you will, to behave in totally inappropriate ways. And so when we get Trump's legal schedule, the story should not be, gosh, the campaign's calendar is going to get really messed up this year. It should be, my God, an entire political party has lined up behind a guy who has innumerable pending litigation, both criminal and civil, and who is accused of overthrowing the government. And yet the Republican Party is still behind him, and yet he continues with his campaign. Why is that? Why can millions of Americans remain deluded and remain tied to this guy? That's what we should be covering. So as we move from that to what is really occurring, I think the legal wrangling over the last week or so is noteworthy for one particular reason. The Trump people, and Trump in particular, have never respected women, and they surely have never respected black women. And I think it is affecting the way they are litigating in Georgia to their detriment. We saw one of the Trump lawyers, Kenneth Chesebro, who was one of the guys who came up with a phony elector scheme, demand a quick trial in Georgia. Why would he do that? It's because he thinks somehow he's going to catch Fani Willis off guard. Just this African-American woman, local prosecutor, she can't possibly be ready. And in fact, when he made the request for an early trial, a speedy trial, she said, fine, October 23, let's go. So I think they underestimate her at their peril. Another example we saw when Mark Meadows trooped into federal court on Monday and testified in his own case for moving the case from state to federal court. First of all, this is mind-bogglingly risky and pretty dumb, to be honest. You never want to waive the Fifth Amendment, which is what he did. And sure enough, what did he do? He confessed that he was in the thick of all of this kind of stuff. He was in every meeting. He was in every call. And to the extent to which he thinks that he can worm his way out of federal court or exonerate him entirely because some of his duties may have been within the confines of his office as chief of staff, he also made clear that a bunch of stuff he's doing was political. And in fact, the judge remarked upon that. And now the judge wants the parties to brief him, to submit filings on whether, if a little bit of the conduct is within his official duties, he can still get into federal court. What does that mean? It means that the judge has perceived that a whole bunch of what Mark Meadows did is outside the scope of his duties, even if he gets into federal court, this judge has essentially hinted he's not going to buy a total immunity defense. So why did Meadows do this? Why did he think it was a good idea to waive all of his Fifth Amendment privileges, to get into court, to testify? Again, I think it's because they've underestimated Fani Willis. Did they expect her to be loaded for bear on Monday when she came in and took him chapter and verse through her indictment, pointing out all the ways in which he had acted as a political operative, not as chief of staff? I don't think so. Did they think that she would be uncomfortable, off guard in federal court, since she usually appears in state court? Well, if that's what they were thinking, she sure seemed at home. She was sure making her points with that judge. So again, we come back to this observation that I've made. Over and over again, Trump has expressed fury, contempt for African-American women, whether it's Fani Willis, whether it's Judge Chutkan, who is the judge in the D.C. January 6th case. It oozes from every pore. And as a result of that, I think, first of all, his attorney has already managed to infuriate Judge Chutkan by overacting in his histrionics in court. But moreover, they are making now litigation decisions that are foolish, that are harming themselves. And that's specifically, I think, a result of their own thinking, their own racist, misogynistic thinking. So if you think things don't come back to haunt him, maybe think again. Maybe really the chickens are coming home to roost. So if you want to hear more about that from a very authoritative source, Mark Elias, please listen to Jen Rubin's Green Room this week. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.